my charger for my computer is so like it well not my charging port, I guess, is like really bad. So it keeps
I hate it when that
not
happens.
yeah, so it like keeps not charging right, and the worst part is that it always makes this really fucking awful noise that even appears on my streams. If you look at the
Oh.
streams, you can even fucking hear it. It's the worst noise ever. I hate it.
Yeah, and I've had big issues with phone chargers that don't work, or specifically charging ports that don't work.
Yeah.
Pain in the ass.
Well, what's the worst thing is actually getting them repaired. But the thing is that like I can get mine repaired because mine's still under warranty, but I don't want to because that involves me being without my computer for like 3 weeks, and fuck that.
Oh yeah, I mean
I don't have a
that is a
life
huge
outside of my
inconvenience.
computer, so rep. What you're basically asking me is to die for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I feel that.
All right. Let me just check that everything's like on the up and up.
So is this also gonna appear on YouTube?
Yeah, it is. I use Restream, so I stream to both platforms. I
Oh, okay.
might create a live cut of this. I'm not sure. With these kind of things, like the last time I did like a regular discussion and not like a Nazi fucking debate meme, I didn't make a live cut for it. Usually, I just make the live cuts for the debate memes, but I
Oh,
don't know.
okay.
I'm gonna have to think about it.
Okay.
Uh, but the entire stream will be showing up either way. Hold on, let me
Mm.
just open one last thing. What's up? What the fuck? There it is.
So out of a curiosity, how old are you? Are you a student right now?
I am a student. I'm 21.
Oh, okay.
How old are you? Because I know that like especially in this space, like I feel like a particularly young person because like I'm the only person I feel that I know of at least that is solidly a Zoomer. I
Yeah.
actually initially thought I was a millennial, but I learned recently that I'm 2 years short of being a millennial, which puts me solidly in Zoomer territory.
Right. So for me, I've been taking a gap year, and starting in the fall, I'm going to start my master's program for public affairs. So I'm 23, which means that I am one of the elder Zoomers. And that's something that I learned like not that long ago. For the longest time, I thought I was a millennial, but I'm
But you were born
barely a
in
Zoomer.
1996, right?
Yeah. No, 97.
Oh, 97. I
Yeah.
mean, like,
So
it's
right on the
it's no
cusp.
real difference.
Yeah, there really isn't.
Okay, well, let's hold on. Oh fuck, there was a. I thought I had. Sorry, I was supposed to have a window up, but my normal background's there instead. I don't know why. One sec. What the fuck? Why is it? I see it. It's right up there in the top left. I just can't. Fuck. There you go. Oh no, that's not. Hmm. Okay, yeah, I'm deleting this. Okay. No, that's not working. Oh, fuck, I hate when this happens. Like the window capture thing in Streamlabs is so fucking awful. I hate it. Cause like half of the time it does like the window that I actually want to be displayed isn't even like there. I guess maybe
Uh,
it's because I have so many tabs that like my shit's just getting confused, but I don't know.
I mean, I'd imagine. I've never used this platform, and it seems pretty confusing. So,
Oh, it is extremely confusing. I genuinely hate Twitch as well. I hate live streaming. That's why I don't do that much. But I really
right.
hate
Oh yeah, I
Twitch.
never do.
I really hate Twitch. Like I do live streaming mainly for politics stuff just because I feel like it's a better avenue for that. Whereas
Mm.
my video essays are more like artistic kind of like they're not like like the data like the sort of like Like I'm never gonna talk about fucking like Biden in a video essay probably. I was thinking of
Oh,
making one for a prediction that I had that actually came to be true. This was at the time that like Elizabeth Warren was starting to make some rounds and was starting to look like the front runner. And I was going to make the argument that no, this is actually a race between Bernie and Biden. Warren doesn't matter. It's going to end up between Bernie or Biden.
oh,
Ended up being,
100%.
I ended up being right about that, but I didn't make the video, so.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I thought that from the beginning as well. Focusing too much on Warren was delusional. Or even Buttigieg. I mean, just basically candidates whose entire support, for the most part, was only white voters. They're not going to win a Democratic primary.
She's also just like really fucking like nobody likes her. Not even people in her own fucking state like her. Like
Oh yeah,
it's actually not like people think like it's just like recently, but like no, like the people of Massachusetts have evidently been disappointed in Elizabeth Warren for a while.
yeah. No, I mean I think she won her last election by like 19 percentage points, which might seem impressive. And then you realize, oh, it's in Massachusetts, which is the heavily blue state. Votes like plus 25
Yeah.
then in a general election.
Yeah, of course. Oh fuck! Why can't I bring this up? This is so weird. Oh my god, I hate when this happens. I mean, like, if it's consistently not doing that, I guess I can just do without it. But like, I really want to bring it up. Let's try it. I'm gonna try to put in a new window capture one more time.
So is this considered part of the stream, or no? That hasn't started yet.
No, the stream
At
is
least on
start.
Discord.
The stream has started yet. If you know anything about my streams, you know that I'm very bad at doing them, which is
Oh,
why,
okay.
like, usually this is why I make the live cuts. The live cuts are there so that people don't have to watch this shit. Because half of the time I start the stream and I don't know what the fuck's going on, and I have to fucking adjust shit while the stream is going on.
Okay, yeah, because I have a feeling this part might be comical to some people because it's like the part of the sitcom where everyone is fucking up their lines, like the outtakes.
Okay, I think this is good. Okay, hold on. Oh. Okay, I think it's working. Okay. So yeah, so I assume, I mean, like, since this is happening on my channel, I'm gonna hope and pray, even though I know that is probably not the case, considering the fucking views on those two videos, that the people watching this have. By the way, you should tell your followers about this if you haven't. But
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Wait, so real quick, so I don't see you at all. Do you see me at all, or are we doing this without a video?
oh, I don't see you. I don't generally do the. I usually just play Pokemon while I'm talking to people, so I don't generally show people on my stream. I usually just
Oh, okay.
have the voice.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Learning so much today.
Uh, fuck. So what was I saying? I don't remember. Oh yeah, I'm gonna hope that the people who are watching this have watched my video on Biden. I'm gonna hope that you have, because I sent the video to you.
Mm-hmm.
So my positions are pretty well and clear. I spoke at a great length about them, and I made a number of arguments. And I've listened to your side of it. So how do you like, considering my sort of like argumentation against why I'm not in favor of voting for Biden, what would you say in response to that? Because what you were talking about in your video on it, I think, is the point that I think a lot of pundits and political commentators are kind of missing about a lot of the people who are voting for Biden. Because a lot of the people who are voting for Biden have my idea on it, and they not recognize.
Sorry,
they have my idea on it, so they've not recognized that, like, the calculation doesn't have anything to do with sort of who is better. That's irrelevant to me. It's on a totally different like playing field than that. So yeah, how would you sort of like address that? Hello? Where'd he go? Who knows? Hello?
Oh, hello. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, it was just cutting off, so I didn't hear like.
Hello? Ugh. Whoops. I wonder when he's gonna show up.
After.
Hello? You there?
Yes. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Sorry. It's cutting off. Like as soon as I hear you for a little bit, and then just completely goes silent.
I'm gonna hope that doesn't have to do with my charging computer.
Okay. So where we left off, and hopefully it doesn't cut off, as you said, you watched my video and you think that.
Still gone. I think it does have to do with my charging computer. Fuck! I think it does. I think it does have to do with my computer. I think you might not be able to hear me when my computer is not charging, which is really weird. Hello?
Hey, yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what keeps on happening. Was your
Yeah, like I
computer
said,
charging?
yeah, I think that for some reason it might be the case that the mic is shutting off whenever the computer stops charging, which is sort of intermittently right now, which is really annoying.
Okay. Yeah, because I have a feeling, I mean, that's going to be a pretty big issue if that continues.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if it. I might have to do this again if this keeps going on, but let's continue from now. For now,
Okay.
I'm gonna
All right,
not
so you
touch
said.
anything, so
Okay,
hopefully
sounds good.
nothing fucking explodes.
All right, yeah, well, it seems to be a back and forth now, so that's good. So yeah, you said you watched my video, people who are voting for Biden are missing, and then it went blank.
Yeah, I was saying they're kind of missing a integral part of the calculation here, and that like they're addressing a a sort of dynamic that isn't really relevant to the calculations of people like me, because they're basing the argument off of whether Biden is better than Trump or not, and I find that irrelevant.
And why do you find that irrelevant?
Well, not entirely irrelevant, but being as close as Biden and Trump are, and I think there's no doubt that they are, in some sense, close in terms of their ideological alignment, that my sort of like inclination or my strategy in terms of like voting or not voting for Biden, I think that we as the left are an interest group and that we should start working like an interest group. And that means that if our interests aren't being represented, then we en masse don't vote. I mean, it's the same kind of principle that we were talking about a bit ago with Biden when it came to that Charlemagne the God interview and the whole sort of discourse around the black community about that when it comes to not handing out your vote as an interest group, as the black interest group or the left interest group for free. That there is some sort of like obligation that you have to meet, and that like when you are doing what Biden is doing, which is basically spitting in the face of all of the left, then no, I'm not going to vote for you. You have to give me some sort of like reason. if you're saying from the outset, you know, my vote is free, then they have no reason really to do anything for you.
Well, my response to that is there was a primary and I voted for Bernie Sanders. And to be fair, I did want Bernie to probably to threaten to run as an independent or to threaten to run as a green candidate and say to Biden, hey, unless you concede on like these 5 to 10 important platform points, then I'm going to run third party. I don't care. And I'm going to count you and I'm going to cost you the presidency.
Well, he didn't do that. So it's up to us now.
so that's my point, right? If that had been the case, then it would make more sense to make that calculation. But right now, we're at the point where it's either going to be Biden and it's either going to be Trump. And you also have to look at their platform. So I know in your video, you addressed
No. I think that it is specifically because he didn't do that it is up to us to do it. Because if he's not going to do it...
How's it up to us? So how would the left thrive under Trump? Or why would the prospects of the left be better under Trump than under Biden?
It's not about the prospects of the left being better under Trump or better under Biden. My concern is with completely taking over the Democratic Party. I think we are at war with the centrists. The centrists have evidently, since 2016, made clear that they are at war with us. And we need to treat this war like it's a war. And not pretend that we're out here making friends with them. So I think that this is a tactic in the inevitable war to take over to completely and utterly take over the Democratic Party and destroy the centrist wing.
So then how are you treating it like a war if you're not participating in the process? That's my question.
But that's a very confusing question. What is the process of voting have to do with...
So right now, the Biden campaign, unlike the Hillary campaign back in 2016, has actually formed a platform committee with the Bernie Sanders campaign. You have AOC is on the committee. The Sunrise Movement is on the committee.
Yeah, and they are pushing them left. Well, in 2016, I'm pretty sure that Bernie Sanders had some role in drafting the platform. But I think either way, the platform means nothing.
But my point is, it was different, right? Because that was specifically at the convention, and that's not as relevant. But over here, we have specifically the Biden campaign collaborating with the Sanders campaign, extending that olive branch to push through these policy priorities. And that did not happen back in 2016 with Hillary. So I do think that is more significant and something that we have to take into account. I also just don't see how the left is going to be stronger if Trump wins again, because then it's different if it's Biden, right? And we will have more influence if it's Biden, because Biden does rely on our votes in order to win. The Democratic Party still does rely on progressives to win. But if it's Trump, he doesn't need us. And it's also going to be his final term, so he has carte blanche at that point. He can just do whatever he wants.
Okay, so your argument is that the left won't be better under Trump because he doesn't care?
The left won't be better under Trump because we not only haven't advanced any policy goals under him, but we've slid back quite a bit. I mean, just Trump alone.
Well, yeah, if you're talking about the policies that are currently being implemented, but really, I don't see much difference between... Honestly, I really don't see much difference between the policies of Biden and Trump, which is why I mean, I know there are differences, and you've outlined them, and I agree with them. But if we're looking at the big picture, I don't think that the policy differences between Trump and Biden justify giving up completely your ability to weaponize your votes.
So I think that, just for the sake of the stream, because maybe the people watching haven't seen our videos, so I just want to outline what the policy differences are and why they're important. So under Trump, around 7 million people have lost their health insurance because he's reduced the cost reduction subsidies to Obamacare. no matter how you want to square it, 7 million people losing their health insurance is a huge deal, right? In addition to that, withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal, which will lead to increased tensions with Iran, it makes the entire world less safe.
Okay,
Biden would reinstate the nuclear deal.
Do you realize, though, that, like, whenever we are running against a Republican, and we will be running against a Republican again, and that's probably going to be someone like fucking Tom Cotton, and who fucking knows what kind of shit that he'll be pulling then.
Oh yeah, it could be him.
And it's going to be even worse knowing the neoliberal devastation that's going to occur under Biden. Who knows what kind of fucking weird shit that's going to come out of that.
But there's going to be even worse neoliberal devastation under Trump. I mean...
Yes, I know,
Trump
but that's not the point.
Neoliberal.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that, well, when the neoliberal... Okay, there's a difference between neoliberal devastation under Trump and Biden. That's because at least, like, people kind of expect that Trump's going to do the fucking neoliberal shit. People seem, like, more sort of, like, outraged whenever the Democrats do the neoliberal shit. That's why, like, Obama will get, like, massively blamed for, like, neoliberal policies, even though Trump will, like, accelerate those same neoliberal policies, and then they'll defend him. But anyways, fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say. But hold on. Hold on. My charger again.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Fuck.
Because I can hear you now. But
I hate when this happens. Okay, I'm not touching it. Okay.
Okay.
What are you saying?
So as I was saying, so your argument.
Oh my god.
Whenever Democrats enact neoliberal policies, then that pisses more people off, so then more people will be mobilized. But you're saying that more people get pissed off when Trump is in power, so that mobilizes more people. You see what I mean?
I never said that more people get pissed off when... I don't think that's necessarily true.
Which one?
My goal isn't like accelerationism. I don't care about that. My goal isn't like things will get so shitty under Trump that like they'll be angry. My goal is to threaten the establishment of the Democratic Party. I'm saying that I will bring the ship down. I'm willing to endure. And I'm not in a fucking like, well, I'm not American to begin with, but I've said that many times before, but I'm not into like the fucking like class fucking like hierarchy where like I would like not be affected by this. I'm fucking disabled. I would be among the worst affected by this. But I'm saying that I am willing to endure all of that and bring down the Democratic Party if they do not succumb to some of our goals instead of constantly spitting in our face.
So I think not voting for Biden right now, not participating in the process, doesn't make sense in that even if Biden loses, that doesn't necessarily hurt the Democratic Party in that the consultant class will still make a bunch of money because they can run ads against Trump, run ads against Republicans.
Oh, well, I've addressed this before. Sam Cedar made this point. I've addressed this before. I'm threatening the Democratic Party establishment, yes, but the people I'm trying to convince are not the Democratic Party establishment because they have a vested interest in not listening to us, even if they lose, right? I'm trying to convince the American people that, like, if these centrist candidates keep losing, I think we have seen a consistent trend, even since Obama, of people becoming more and more disillusioned with the idea that becoming more and more disillusioned with the idea that the centrist is always the best option and the option that's going to win. I think that if we accomplish this, and I think this is one of the most important parts, and if we make the case, because Bernie especially has not been making the case, which is extremely disappointing, but if we make the case that, look, John Kerry, fucking Obama ran on hope and change, then we go to Hillary, lost, Biden, lost.
Well,
if we make that case,
that Biden's going to lose. There was a poll today that
no. I'm not saying that Biden is going to lose. I'm just saying if he were to lose because of the left.
Yeah.
And
so
here's the
then
thing, I don't necessarily want Biden to lose. If Biden came out and said, hey, I will adopt fucking... He made it tangibly clear somehow. I don't know how the fuck he would do this, but he made it tangibly clear, and I was convinced that he would fight for something. That I would at least... here's the thing. You may be convinced that he is open to being convinced by the left. I frankly do not think so. I think neither Biden nor Trump is in any way going to do anything for the left unless you burn shit down and fucking cause a panic.
Well,
and I think that
Biden-
both of them are
Biden
equally
needs the
susceptible
left.
to that.
Biden needs the left to win an election. So
I don't
he's
think
gonna have to appease us.
Biden doesn't care. Biden is constantly talking about how he's not going to implement Medicare for all.
Biden
Clearly,
wants
he
to
doesn't
win.
care about the left votes.
Well, obviously,
No
like,
person
I
who
know
cares
he
about the
wants
left
to implement
votes
Medicare for
is gonna say that. They're
He
gonna
wants to
dance
implement-
around it and say, "Oh, well, you know," blah. He's not gonna say, "No, fuck Medicare for all," because he always
So
says
Biden
that.
wants to-
So he clearly doesn't
He
care.
wants to implement, trust me, I know, and he wants to implement a public option. Probably not going to get the public option. We're going to go back to a strengthened Obamacare, but then that means 7 million more people are going to get health insurance.
Honestly,
So
I think
that's a
that
net
honestly,
benefit. That's a net
I'm
benefit.
extremely strongly against the public option. I honestly think that the public option could end up being the worst case scenario.
So worst case than Obamacare and what we had before Obamacare?
Yeah, I think that it could end up being worse than Obamacare.
How so?
Because what's going to happen when the public option is implemented is that all of the insurance companies are going to push all of the sick people onto, especially me, because I am a person that requires a lot of healthcare, and I am a burden to the healthcare industry. They're going to push all the people like me onto the public system, and then they're going to defund that public option, make it extremely awful for us. Then they're going to get people they're going to say, "Oh, look at how bad public option is. This is why we need even more fucking privatization." And then it's going to be even fucking worse.
No, that's what I'm saying.
This has happened before in other countries.
I know. No, we're not even going to get the public option, and that's why obviously we should have had Medicare for all. So under Biden, we are just going to get Obamacare again the way it was before Trump became president, and I'm aware of that. But my entire thing with Biden is, if you said, okay, if he made certain overtures to the left, you would consider voting for him. Well, I know in your video you discussed how when it comes to the policies against communities of color, both Trump and Biden are atrocious. And historically, that's true for Biden. But the political winds have changed now to where Biden does need to appeal to more people of color to win. He does need to appeal to the left to win. The country in general right now, if you look at the polling data, is center-left as opposed to center-right the way it was back in the 90s. Back when Biden...
Oh, well, I don't think that any sort of... Honestly, I don't think that any sort of progress. If it didn't happen under Obama, it won't happen under Biden. No progress on race.
Moved left. But the country's moved
I don't
left
think that matters.
since Obama.
I don't think that.
And Biden's actual platform is the left of Obama's. I mean, if you look at Biden's platform, what is he calling for? Just when it comes to criminal justice, hold on. He's calling for decriminalizing marijuana, expunging previous marijuana convictions. He's looking to decriminalize or to end the death penalty, to end the federal disparity between powdered cocaine and crack cocaine. Like, these are tangible efforts.
Yeah, and
like,
I think that well, I don't know about that. I'm pretty sure Bernie's was far more progressive than that.
No, I'm saying about an actual.
For an actual, yeah.
Nominees, this is the most progressive. It's much more progressive than what Obama.
But here's the thing:
Obama wasn't talking about any of these things.
We're in a critical moment right now. Especially this argument may have worked a couple of weeks ago, but we're in a critical moment right now, and I'm under the impression that neither Biden nor Trump will make any sort of significant racial progress. Even considering what you said, I think that all of the important stuff is going to be done on the state level. Things like, one of the most recent stories, Minnesota having to completely fucking abolish the police in favor of community-based
that's actually
police
very
organizations.
Yeah. So Minneapolis City Council voted to disband the police departments. But if you look at that council, it consists of 12 Democrats and 1 member of the Green Party. Do you think if it were predominantly Republican, would even be having this discussion? So
no, I think that you should. I think
Democrats.
that you should vote for down. I think that in terms of the House and the Senate, the calculation is complete. We're talking about Biden, not the House and the Senate.
So that's what I'm saying. Okay, so
I think that you should vote for down ballot progressives.
So we're talking about the city council, right? So why is it a different standard if we're looking at the local races, state races, House?
Because we're talking about what kind of progress will be done on the federal level. I do not think that Biden will make any sort of he might try on a couple of things, but I doubt that he's going to make any sort of like significant political effort to get any sort of progress passed.
One thing that I want to say though real quick is also, like, I think voting for Biden also depends on where you live. The only reason why I'm definitely voting for him is because I live in Texas, and this time around, polling data between Trump and Biden, it shows they're virtually tied, and so Texas might decide the election. If I were in a solid blue states, I probably wouldn't even vote for him myself, right? Depending on the states. But you do have to acknowledge that it is important to maintain certain institutions where you can enact more change. So Trump just this last week was talking about sending the military to bomb protesters, clearly violating the First Amendment. And we wouldn't have that under Biden, right? So a large part of this is also just harm prevention, making sure that existing institutions that we can use to our advantage are still there.
Well, I've heard recently this argument about the idea of Trump's attacks on the First Amendment and what that's going to do. But like, we have to look at this very strategically, and we have to consider what sort of like risk we're willing to take on. Now,
I'm looking at it strategically.
Now look at the polling on these protests. They're overwhelmingly positive right now. I think that if Trump really goes through with his sort of like rhetoric, I mean, that's going to be a quick fucking path to my end goal, which is complete fucking revolution, which is what I'm trying to bring about. I think that if Trump decides to seriously bring out the military, they might actually, considering even what the generals have said, there might actually literally be a military revolt. I'm not even kidding.
And how
all of the generals are against him. I'm a revolutionary. I want complete and utter destruction of the current liberal democracy of America.
So are you saying, hold on, I just want to make sure that we have this clear. Having the military right now, which is unelected, enact a military coup, and then actually have a military junta would be preferable to us having Joe Biden as president?
Huh? No, I didn't say military coup. I said there might be a revolt, meaning that they might just disobey his orders.
So if they disobey his orders, are you saying then who would lead who would be sprung into power at that point under this scenario?
No, there'd probably be some sort of like it would be some uncertain. Speaking of who would be in power in this sort of scenario it's kind of like it's asking the wrong question, because what you would have then is a sort of like situation in which a pre-revolutionary period in which there would be like multiple groups with different levels of power trying to enact certain goals. I think that ultimately the military is an apolitical organization. I don't think it's going to get involved for or against the protests. But I mean,
people within the military have their own political convictions, so I don't think that's true.
Well, I know, but I think that they value the constitutional idea of the civilian control of the military, right? I don't think that it's going to be like fucking Bolivia, where the military is going to fucking like have Trump out bring Trump out with the fucking guns and shoot him, right? I think that the military is not. Either way, whether there's a revolution or not, the military will play little role in that.
So the largest military ever assembled will play a little role if there's a revolution in the United States. They wouldn't use that as an opportunity to consolidate power. They would just give up. Is that what you're saying?
But you're assuming that like the generals are like if the point of structuring the military in the way that the United States has, and this has kind of been a problem with other countries where there actually have been military coups, is that the military doesn't really have a stake in what's going on. What, you know what I mean? That like we've never even come close to seeing anything like the military taking over, because like they're not. in the U.S.
Sure, we haven't seen that yet, but what you're advocating for would lead to that because, for example, in Egypt back in 2013,
Yeah,
when the
but
military
Egypt's different. Yeah,
Mohammed
but
Morsi. No, but I'm saying what leads to that
yeah,
is
but
that
the way that the
dictatorship.
military is structured in Egypt is fundamentally different. They don't have civilian oversight of the government. The military in Egypt is a
But they
separate
had
entity.
So they did. So at that point, they did have civilian oversight of the military under Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood. It was their first democratically elected president in like the last.
Well, I
40
know
to
it was
50 years
I
up
know it
until
was
that
their
point.
first democratically elected, but I'm still pretty sure like Turkey has had democratic presidents, however, like democratic presidents for since it's been around. But the military's still been an independent agency. That's why there've been
But
so
the
many
military,
coups in Turkey. Even though
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
supposedly democratic country, it is independent from the government by law.
Well, I mean, but that's also the case here in the United States. It's independent.
It's not. It's there's civilian oversight. That's actually one of the main things that prevents coups. It's like that's why America's never even gotten close. Is because like the people that like become generals, like the reason that like there are a lot of coups is because like the people that would become like head of the army have like vested interests. Like everyone has their own material interests, right? And it's a lot easier when like you're independent of the government and your whole role and the whole reason you got in there wasn't necessarily to serve the government and to serve the civilian institutions versus an institution where that is always the goal. So you'd have to be a general. I don't know if I don't know if there's a completely supreme general. I'm pretty sure there's not. So if you were a general, you'd have to, I guess, assassinate all of the other generals. Then you'd have to, or convince them to like join the coup, even though they're not like that goes against everything that they've been taught in sort of like the military doctrine that they're supposed to not do. It's possible, yes, that there's a military coup, but it's not very likely.
This is important. So you're talking about civilian oversight, right? If there is an outright revolution, Trump is overthrown, we don't have a president, we don't have an executive branch, then there's less civilian oversight. So you know what I mean? That leads to uncharted territory for us in the U.S., and that could lead to a potential coup and potential consolidation among the military. You have because that gets rid of civilian oversight. But my entire point is, if your goal is revolution, if that is preferable to Biden getting elected, do you really think that there would be material gains if right now we're in a pandemic, okay? We have around 20 to 25% unemployment. We have massive inequality. How would a revolution empower people? How would it just not make things worse? How would it not just lead to more chaos?
Because the revolution would be there to address those issues. What do you think? There'd just be a revolution for no reason?
But if it's completely unstructured, how would it address those issues?
Who said it would be unstructured?
Huh?
Who said it would be unstructured?
No, exactly. That's my thing. Yeah, it would be completely unstructured.
No, why? Why would it be unstructured?
Because you have all of these different interests.
Revolutions are almost never completely unstructured.
So, do you really think that from June to November, right, all the way up to the election, we would be able to have a unified front, like a unified group of citizens who are actually able to enact a revolution successfully?
If we harness the energy that's going on right now, yes.
So
all we need to do is harness that energy.
So even this isn't fully organized. So when it comes to the protests that are going on right now,
what do you mean by fully organized?
Well, my point is,
does it have to have like a central governing body? I don't understand.
No, but I'm saying
I'm an anarchist. I'm an anarchist.
But to usher in a new government, right? But then how would those decisions be made? You would need to still draft up a constitution, even if you were to have a decentralized government as anarchists want. You know what I mean? Like all of this stuff would have to get decided on. You
can draft a new constitution. It happens all the time.
All right, and so you think that. So you think that all of those institutions would then be preferable to the ones that we have now?
Not necessarily. It's up to us. It's up to, I think that if we sit on our laurels and say, "Oh, it'll just be good," then we're gonna lose. I think it's up to us to make of that situation what we will. So if you're asking, why would I choose such an extreme sort of position instead of like waiting the long game, I guess, and waiting until eventually somehow the Democratic Party is not controlled by neoliberals that have consistently every single election cycle prevented us from gaining any sort of significant power. Even if we take that.
Even before Bernie ran for president, the left had no power. So now the left should participate more in electoral politics, because with the way the media is structured right now and the focus specifically on national races, on presidential races, if you're not involved in electoral politics, if you just abandon that.
Wait. What has taken up the news cycle these past few days? Was it the presidential race or was it the fucking protests?
Right now it's been
exactly. That's what I want.
Hold on.
That's what takes. They can't ignore all of us in the streets wrecking shop. They can't ignore that.
The catalyst for the left getting strengthened was Bernie Sanders running for president. That's how we got all those progressives elected into Congress. That's what led to more movements on the ground. That's what taught people how to organize. That's why you do have younger people right now who are leading more structured protests that have specific demands.
I frankly don't buy that like Bernie Sanders caused all of this. I think Bernie was just a symptom of the growing left sentiment.
So where do you think the left would have been if Bernie Sanders didn't enter electoral politics?
Probably in a worse place, but it would be it would be in a place that would be better than where it was before anyway. Bernie Sanders being there was a good step, yes, but it was not like some kind of like, it was not so like the left was nothing, and then Bernie Sanders came in, and then suddenly we had all.
The left was completely irrelevant on a national level.
Yeah, if you only consider fucking electoral politics, I mean, there have been other. You see, I don't think only in terms of how many Congress people do we have. I think of what kind of policies can we implement.
So before Bernie ran for president, the left mainly partook in direct action, mainly in protests. I'm thinking of the WTO protest back in 1999. That was the main function of the left. But the left had no teeth. The left was not influencing policy. That's why right now, Medicare for All is a serious policy that's being discussed. That's why the Green New Deal is now supported by most of the country. That stuff didn't exist before. Joe Biden and his criminal
either way, I never said that like you shouldn't like run for Congress or whatever.
But the thing is, you were saying that the left would be in a better position now if Bernie had never run for president.
I never said that.
No, because you said, well, sure, they wouldn't be in a better position now, but eventually they would get to the right place if he had never run, because we were to focus more on like direct action.
No. What I said was that we would be in a worse place, but since 2008, the Democratic Party had been moving further and further left. Now, I think that Bernie Sanders was a symptom of that leftward trajectory. I do not think that he was necessarily the catalyst of it.
But my entire thing is, without Bernie Sanders, without there being an electoral,
I don't think that we owe everything to Bernie Sanders. I don't buy that.
I'm saying we don't owe everything to Bernie Sanders. I'm also talking about, Justice Democrats created by the Young Turks founder.
But I don't think that we were like completely relevant before 2016. I think that 2016 was just our first chance. I think that with the left regrouped after 2008, and 2016 was our first opportunity to make ourselves known.
No, it's true, but I'm saying that before that, we also didn't have like an Ilhan Omar, an AOC, a Ro Khanna, even an Ayanna Pressley, right? We didn't have those people in the House. The most progressive Democrat who caucused with the Democrats was Bernie Sanders, obviously, and then Elizabeth Warren. And that's all we had. In fact, Elizabeth Warren was seen as the figure of the left. Bill de Blasio was seen as a significant leader within the left at that point. That's where we were then, okay?
Well, I know. I didn't say that Bernie Sanders had no impact. I'm just saying I don't think that we owe everything to him. I don't think that I don't
And
think
it's
that
not
like
just that,
if
but
it
I'm
weren't
saying
for Bernie Sanders, then oh no, there is no other thing that we could have possibly done.
But
I mean,
I'm saying
but I
a
think
lot of it
either
is
way,
because of
my
electoral
point was
gains.
never that you should not run for Congress or that you should not participate in electoral politics. I never said that. In fact, in my video, I said the exact opposite of that. That you should, in fact, vote for down ballot progressives. That you should, in fact, vote for the Democratic Party if you're talking about the Senate or the House. That you should, in fact, run for Congress if that's something that you think would be good for you. I never
So
said
then
give up
why would
electoralism.
you-
I'm saying that like my ultimate goal, and I think that the only way that we're going to get actual socialist policies implemented is if we have a revolution. But I didn't say that, barring that, we should completely ignore electoralism and just
Okay,
only
well-
focus on direct action. I think
Okay,
that you do
so-
what you want. If you think that electoralism is where you want to go, do that. I'm personally more for direct action, but I don't think that either is harmful or anything.
Okay, fair enough on that point. Because I think you need an inside-outside game. So I think you do need direct action. But in order for the direct action to be successful, you need people elected who are sympathetic to the demands of the individuals partaking in the direct action. Okay,
But I'm trying to. Let me be frank. I'm trying to abolish the police. I frankly don't think that Biden is gonna implement that under any unless we fucking burn the country down.
That's the thing. So okay, hold on. That's important because Joe Biden and no president would be able to abolish or defund the police. That is all left up to city councils. That's why you need to make sure, if that's your goal, that you have members on the city councils who are sympathetic towards that goal.
Oh
okay?
yeah.
So regardless
you're
of presidents, that
100%
doesn't
right.
matter as much. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so,
but you're the one that brought it up, weren't you?
Well,
my point was that. My
that
point
if
was that I don't think
they were
Biden or
Democrats-
Trump is going to make any sort of difference. So you're kind of admitting my point there.
No. I was saying if there are Democrats on the city council, then they are more likely to be amenable to that cause than if they are Republicans. That's just a fact.
Yep.
On the national level, specifically presidential level, I'm saying that Biden has a progressive criminal justice platform that Trump does not have, all right, that Trump would not adopt. And so it would make more sense for those other goals to have Trump. I mean, even when it comes to the issue of immigration.
I don't think it matters because I'm trying to abolish the police and Biden is not going to do that.
But I'm saying no matter who was running for president, that would, even if Bernie.
But that's
Bernie
my
was
point.
candidate, even
But
if
that's
Bernie
my
were
point.
president. But that's what I'm saying. That you need to focus on the city councils at that point. Okay?
But yeah,
the city councils.
but yeah,
So
exactly.
how is
That's
that
my point.
relevant?
But remember, you're the one that brought up sort of like racial issues. I didn't bring it up.
So I was saying
I'm
specifically-
making
hold
the
on,
point
hold
that
on,
it doesn't
hold on,
matter.
hold on. I was saying specifically for the city councils, it makes more sense to have politicians who are more amenable to your causes. And
Yes,
when it comes
absolutely.
to defunding the police, Democrats are more amenable to that than Republicans.
Yes,
okay?
absolutely.
Even if they don't fully support it. So then, on the national level, when it comes to something such as ending the death penalty, Biden is more amenable to that than Trump is. Biden is more amenable to ending the federal disparity between crack and powdered cocaine. Biden is more amenable to decriminalizing marijuana and then expunging prior convictions for marijuana. Biden is more amenable to extending funding, tripling funding actually, for Title I schools that are specifically in low income and minority areas that desperately need that funding for education. So my entire point is that Joe Biden is more amenable to those causes. Sure, we're not talking about defunding the police when it comes to the president, right? That's specifically confined to
No, I'm not talking about defunding. I'm talking about completely abolishing and replacing with a different system.
Well, my goal is defunding the police, and
I'm
but
talking
I'm
about
saying-
complete abolishment and a replacement with a different system.
Sure. So even if that's your goal, right? I'm saying that strategically, when it comes to criminal justice issues, you can acknowledge that when it comes to the police, that's a city issue, right? But when it comes to these other criminal justice demands, then it also makes sense to extend that same logic to them whenever dealing with the presidency, and why it makes more sense to have Biden over Trump.
Well,
That's all I was
except
saying
for the point on Title I schools, because I'm not sure how the legislation works on that, but for pretty much everything else you said, that can be addressed on the state level with much more radical policies. In terms of
Biden
like getting
he's willing to give incentives to states who agree to those policies, right? Willing to give more federal funding to states who agree to those policies. And so if there isn't someone in the executive branch who's pushing for those policies, who's willing to give those incentives, who turns a blind eye to states that don't want to expunge prior convictions of marijuana, want to still criminalize marijuana, then that makes things worse in the long run. That's why you do need federal oversight here, and you should have someone who is more likely to champion policies that are more progressive. Because that's another thing. I mean, even with civil rights legislation, that had to get passed at the national level, because if it didn't, then you would have states that just simply weren't follow it. So you can't just leave that stuff up to the states.
Well, okay. Yeah, with the civil rights issue, I think you're completely right. However, okay, with regards to the policies that you mentioned, I would completely agree with you that we are actually more likely to get those policies implemented under Biden than under Trump. But I think the question is, it comes back to that, because remember, my original point was never that things wouldn't be better under Biden, because certainly they would, but my sort of plan here is to threaten Biden in a way, like to use or vote against him, and it goes the same for the black community and it does for the left.
So that would have worked. My entire thing is, if Bernie, and I did want him to do this, if he had threatened Biden by saying, okay, I'm going to run third party unless you concede on all these points.
But why does it have to be him? Do you think that Biden's not feeling any pressure from, like, the black community, for instance?
No, because here's my point.
But did any of the black politicians come to step up for this idea? No.
Here's why that's important. Because if Bernie were to threaten to run third party, if you're threatened to run as an independent, then that's all about national media attention. Okay?
Oh no, I'm not.
Bernie,
okay.
So what I'm saying. So since he has that name recognition, then and he was the runner-up in the Democratic primary, then Biden would think, oh shit, I might actually lose if Bernie doesn't endorse me and if I don't concede on these policy points to him. That's why strategically it would have to make the most sense if it were him.
No, I'm saying that it would be the best thing, but I don't think that it has to be that. I think you're seeing it in a sort of like black and white way, that if Bernie doesn't do that, then we just give up any sort of hope again of weaponizing our vote. I don't think that.
But then
that's
what
right.
else? Then okay, if we decide we're not going to vote for Joe Biden right now, then so that's what I'm saying. So based on his platform, he has made all these concessions, and we don't have a national figure, someone who could get his attention, someone who could mobilize the Democratic Party, the left factions of the Democratic Party, into pushing him in a progressive direction, then
wait, why does it have to be the left factions of the Democratic Party? Why don't we just fucking go out in the streets and wreck shit until he has to say something?
Until he has to say what? Like, what are your goals here? Like, what specific points, and how would you achieve that?
Okay. Well, we all have different policy goals, but I think that, like, things that I think a lot of us would probably agree on. One thing, especially for me, dude, Medicare for all is extremely fucking important. I'm tired of people dying and suffering without it. He has to adopt it, period. He has to adopt it.
Okay, so then wouldn't it make more sense,
especially during the pandemic, he has to.
So then wouldn't it make more sense to then elect more progressives in the primary?
Yes, I think you should do that.
And to the Senate, okay?
Yes, I think you should do that.
And that's what we should be focusing on. Because
my ideal thing would be if the Democrats completely control Congress, but then Biden either lost or he, hopefully, I'm still praying that eventually he will eventually come around and give us something. And then I'll be out here fucking saying, okay, now you should vote for Biden, don't worry about it, and then we'll all have a good time, and then we'll do the direct action after fucking he's elected.
Yeah, and look, one point that I want to make is that even if it's Trump's president and the Democrats have taken over the Senate, which Republicans are leading in the Senate right now, or have the most seats in the Senate, I mean, that doesn't necessarily ensure that we're going to have progressive policies. A lot of Democrats aren't progressives. And then, of course, like even Nancy Pelosi, and I've covered this in my videos, is fine expanding Trump's surveillance powers under the Patriot Act, is fine increasing his military budget, and yet she calls him unstable, right? So that's completely hypocritical on her part and disgusting and very transparent. But my entire thing is when it comes to January 20th, 2021, it's either going to be Trump who's president or Biden who's president. And if it's Trump who's president, I don't see how that's good for the left, because the theory that some people on the left had back in 2016 was, well, Trump is going to make things so bad.
But like I said, I'm not an accelerationist. This isn't even remotely like my point.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I know you're not an accelerationist, but my entire point is that even if you're not an accelerationist, even if that's not what you want, and you still don't advocate voting for Biden, right? You don't advocate for a Biden presidency over a Trump presidency.
Oh, can I just make one point? I frankly don't think that anyone, like, regardless, considering the allegations against Biden, I don't think that anyone should be in any way pressured to vote for him.
Oh no, I don't
just because of that. Like just because of that, I don't think anyone should feel any pressure for that.
My entire thing though is just being realistic about would things be better under Biden or would things be better under Trump, and also just acknowledging that it's going to be one of those two, because in the U.S. we do not have proportional representation. We don't have ranked choice voting, and so a third party candidate just wouldn't be successful. Even if someone were to run third party, essentially what would happen then is no one, like let's say Bernie ran third party or Jesse Ventura ran third party, some prominent people who would actually have name recognition. No one would get 270 electoral votes, and then the House would pick the president, and they would pick Biden because Democrats control the House, and they're mainly corporate Democrats. So I think that's also why we have to be real about we can't have a viable third-party alternative in this country because of the way the system is
I never suggested that. I have no confidence in any sort of third-party, and I think Ralph Nader and especially what was his name, the guy from way back in the 90s. I think that
Ross Perot.
Yeah, Ross Perot. Like I think that we've very clearly gotten the message that third parties are no longer, they used to be, not anymore, a thing in American politics.
Yeah, I mean,
that the Democratic and Republican Party have such a solid, ever-present, omni-fucking-present grasp on all of the political institutions within Washington D.C. that they've made it literally impossible for a third party to win.
Yeah, even when fucking Teddy Roosevelt ran third party, even though he got a plurality of votes, I believe, the House still picked Taft over him. So yeah, it's just the way, not structured for that type of a change, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, so my entire thing right now is you do acknowledge that things would be better under Biden than they would under Trump, on balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that in January 20th, 2021, either Biden's going to be president or either Trump is going to be president. There's no other alternative, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that the only way that I think that Trump is bad enough that I would relinquish any sort of desire to weaponize my vote is if we were somebody like Marine Le Pen or fucking if he was basically like Hitler, like a fucking if I was convinced that he was about to do some white nationalist shit, which I think that Trump is a racist and a very bad guy, but I don't think he's close to institutionalizing white nationalist policy right now.
Well, because the thing is with Trump, his chief policy advisor, and this type of individual will not be in a Biden White House, is Stephen Miller, who has been a part of white nationalist groups, right? And is advocating for.
Oh yeah, I'm well aware of him. I just don't think that based on what he's I just don't think that based on what he's done that he's even capable of doing that, much less.
Well, because my entire thing is if he wins again, reelected second term, he has carte blanche, and so then he might be more inclined to do something like that. I am no longer going to be president after these 4 years.
That's how it would be theoretically, but I think that there are a lot of institutional barriers to this whole carte blanche theory of I'm just going to do everything. I think, dude, Trump already wants to do anything that he wants, but there are a lot of very powerful institutions beyond even the presidency in Washington D.C. that prevent Trump. If Trump had his way, he would just do everything he wants right now. What do you think, that he's waiting for his second term? No, the second term is relevant. What he will do.
Well, okay, no, it's relevant in that right now, what Trump wants to do
He's not holding himself back because it's like his first term. He doesn't give a fuck.
His top priority is getting reelected, because if he doesn't get reelected, he's gonna have to face legal repercussions, and he just likes being a candidate. I mean, there's a reason why he started campaigning as soon as he got elected. Like, his number one goal is reelection, without a doubt, right? That's what he cares about now. That's what he's preoccupied with now. But if he wins again, that's no longer going to be his preoccupation, because he's already been reelected. Okay, so that's important to keep in mind. I also think that a lot of times some people on the left understate just how dangerous Trump is. So Trump has withdrawn the U.S. from 6 different nuclear treaties that had been negotiated from the last 30 years. Specifically, recently withdrawing the U.S. from the New START Treaty, which was negotiated under Obama. And under that treaty, the Russia and the U.S., the 2 biggest nuclear powers, committed to reducing their nuclear arsenals all the way down to just 1,500 warheads apiece, right? And you also have the Open Skies Treaty, which he withdrew the United States from, which essentially that allows for non-military air travel over Russia, and then non-military air travel over U.S. bases in Europe that Russia can do. And this is supposed to be a de-escalatory measure, so that way both countries can see if the other regions are developing weapons that can potentially be used again against them. But Trump withdrawing the U.S. from this means that right now, going to war with Russia, or just escalating tensions with Russia, has made a lot easier, because he can say, well, we're not a part of the Open Skies Treaty, and so we don't have to provide anything, any sort of evidence, anything that resembles evidence to show you that Russia poses an imminent threat, or that Russia is developing this weapon against the U.S., or that Russia has pointed a missile at the U.S. base in Estonia. You know what I mean? And so I think because climate change is an existential issue, but further nuclearization is also an existential issue. And Trump has been been unprecedented when it comes to that. Completely unprecedented.
If you want my opinion on it, I frankly don't care about like the threat of nuclear war. I don't think it will. I don't think a war between 2 nuclear armed nations will ever happen. It's simple mutually assured destruction. I don't think it will ever happen. I think there will be a lot of trade wars, blah blah, but I don't think that we're gonna have a war between 2 nuclear armed nations, unless fucking fucking al-Baghdadi takes over or something. Hold
on. But my entire point is denuclearization is an incredibly important priority, because in the 1960s we almost had that. I mean, even in
I don't think we did. I think frankly we were never even close to. I think there were a lot of sort of close calls, whatever, but at the end of the day, nobody is going to be the one to say launch the fucking nukes and end the world. No one's going to press the end the world button.
Look, if just one close call comes to fruition, then that could be the end of the world, and that could be a catastrophe, and that's something that we have to be.
I mean, it could be. I frankly think that even if a nuke was launched, that it still wouldn't lead to that there would immediately be a détente. Even if a nuke was launched.
Also, even in the 1980s, we have to keep in mind that Russia was on the verge of potentially launching a nuclear weapon against us, because their intelligence apparatus got some bad intel showing a nuclear missile from the U.S. About to hit Russia. And then luckily someone, though, who actually was the one who's going to press the button and launch the Russian nuke against the U.S., used some common sense and due diligence and decided not to. But if that person, if he had not had a moral restraint at that point, then that could have been a complete catastrophe. So that's what I'm saying. It's important to look at denuclearization and how that has been accomplished pretty much all the way up until Reagan through Obama. There was Bush withdrew, the second Bush withdrew from 3 different nuclear treaties, and that wasn't good. And we started moving towards the denuclearization front again with Obama, which is super important. But Trump has just scrapped all of that. And it just creates an incredibly hostile environment for there to be more production of these weapons. That could be a complete catastrophe. And Joe Biden, at least, more so aligns with the Obama foreign policy. I mean, he was in favor of the Iran nuclear deal, would work to de-escalate these tensions and to denuclearize once again. And I think that's an issue that's overlooked just because it's not a hot button issue. It's not a sexy issue, but it is one of just the existential nature of this planet. Hello? I think we're having some technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
Hello? Okay, I'm gonna hope that well, it works now. I'm gonna hope that my mic um was not like off the whole time. I guess I'll see in the live thing if it is the
Well,
case. That would be
isn't
fucking
this streaming
awful.
live though?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So
Well,
no, but like once
okay.
I watch the playback, I'll be able to see whether or not my mic is off the whole time. But if it wasn't, that would suck. I'd probably have to just delete the stream. If that's the case, I mean, like we can do this again another time. But
Okay.
let's just stop for
Yeah,
like
I
10.
mean,
Let's just stop for like 10 more minutes because I do have to go somewhat soon. But yeah,
right. No, fair enough. And as I was saying though, at the time, I also think this idea that a capitalist structure is always inherently corrupt isn't necessarily true. It depends on how capitalism is being implemented. So I look at the Scandinavian nations right now, and
extremely
what do they
corrupt.
all have? What? Hold on. So, but they've almost eliminated poverty. So I look at Denmark real quick. Denmark is around a 3% poverty rate.
My goal isn't
But
to eliminate poverty.
no. But my point is that it's been virtually eliminated.
My
right?
goal isn't to
Everyone
eliminate
has
poverty.
healthcare. Then what's your goal?
My goal is to have the workers own the means of production.
Okay, but my point is that
people with large amounts of capital, like Sweden, and this is the case in Sweden. I know. I've looked into the Swedish political system. They have lots of billionaires in Sweden, and those billionaires have so much fucking political influence. That's why, like, there's been a massive rightward shift in Sweden in recent years. So
no, I know in the 1990s, yeah, there's a rightward shift.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
Sweden, but whenever we had, so under the social democratic policies that were implemented, like the Meitner plan, where a certain percentage of the aggregate of corporate profits go to the public, then you have a society that's virtually eliminated poverty, that everyone has universal health care.
Well,
everyone
those
goes
are
to
my
college
goal.
for free
I'm
and
not
actually
a
gets the
sot them.
stipends. But
I'm
no,
not a sot them.
I know. But my entire point though is it's very different to just say, well, you know, it's the same corrupt corporate paradigm. But back then in the 1960s, the Democratic Party in the United States, when it came to economic issues, resembled social democratic policies a lot more than it does now, specifically during the rightward turn under Clinton.
That doesn't.
So that's
that
why you
doesn't.
can't say,
Wait, that doesn't change the fact that
paradigm.
it's inherently corrupt. The capitalist democracy is inherently corrupt.
How is it inherently corrupt, and what do you propose as an alternative?
What?
Because when I look at actual systems that have been implemented, I look at the Scandinavian social democracies, and like I was saying, I do see high rates of public ownership, high rates of unionization, ranging anywhere from 35 to 70%, and they virtually eliminated poverty. People get to go to college for free. People get a certain amount of basic needs met.
Yeah, I'm
so
not trying to
then they can
meet
achieve
people's
their goals.
basic needs. I'm trying to make sure that people receive the fruits of their labor. As far
Then
as
how is
I'm
that?
concerned,
How is that done? How is that done, and how is that superior?
Okay. The way that you do that is that you seize the means of production. That can be done in several ways. The two main ways are to either nationalize an industry. This is what I advocate, for example, with the energy industry, or to democratize all of the businesses within that industry. That's something akin to what Richard Wolff advocates in many of the private industries.
Yes, yeah, I am familiar with his work. Yeah.
Yeah, in many of the private industries. That's how you would achieve something like that, so that there's an actual equitable sort of like distribution of profits. Because the way that it works now is that the boss, even in Sweden, receives a significantly larger chunk, disproportionately, several times exponents over the lowest paid member of their business. And I think that is fundamentally unjust. I believe that the people who participate and who are taking money in this way are leeches and they're a threat to society. I believe that the more equality of net worths, the healthier the economy is, and the better quality of life there is. Even now, when it comes to why capitalist democracy is inherently corrupt, it's because business interests in Sweden, like the billionaires, like for example the guy who owns IKEA, have an outsized political influence, meaning that they're able to affect the political structure just by nature of the fact that they have so much money, far more than, for example, a janitor would be able to do.
Yeah, no, okay, and that's fair. But what I'm talking about here, because you're specifically talking about achieving these goals through the context of a revolution, and I prefer achieving these goals through the context of the states and through electoral politics. My issue with trying to achieve these goals through a revolution is, let's look at empirical data. I need to have empirical data before I make a rational decision. I look at the Russian Revolution, Bolshevik Revolution, 1917, and look what happened initially. Initially, you had factory councils. Workers had seized the means of production. Correct, right?
Well, I don't think I don't think that.
No, but
I disagree
in the
with
beginning,
that.
right?
No, I disagree with that fundamentally. I don't think that
even Noam Chomsky.
I don't care what Noam Chomsky says. I don't care what Noam Chomsky says. I don't care what Noam Chomsky says. I don't believe that the Bolsheviks were ever.
No. Factory councils did exist. The workers had seized the means of production. They could vote out people on the factory councils who were corrupt and did not meet their needs. Okay, but then since you still had violent contingents who were corrupt, decided, okay, well, we are going to overthrow this system, consolidate power, and then you essentially had it replaced with state capitalism, which state capitalism is fine in terms of just maximizing production. You can easily get production. China has state capitalism right now, and it's great for producing things. But it limits civil liberties, and it ensures that that corrupt people are still running the system, and it's not democratic. So I look at that, and I realize, okay, that came from a violent revolution. What we have in the Scandinavian social democracies, sure, it's not perfect, right?
Wait, I don't believe in a... Wait, first of all, I don't believe in a Leninist revolution. I don't believe in a vanguard party. Trying to draw any sort of comparison, I believe, is fundamentally ridiculous. That's not the model I'm looking at. But
what you're saying... Hold on. But what you're saying, though...
To say that all violent revolutions are the same is absurd. There are different ways to...
But which revolution are you talking about? Because your tactics, you say, okay, I want some tactics from the peaceful contingents of the civil rights movement, but I also want some of the violent tactics from that movement. Okay.
Yeah, I think that we need to have many different groups enacting in many. I don't think that it's going to be like a one strategy thing. I think they're going to be a lot of groups that we're going to need to make alliances to achieve certain goals. All I'm saying, though,
is that just empirically right now, if we look at what happened in Russia in 1917 when there was a violent revolution versus what's been achieved through electoral politics in the Scandinavian social democracies, we can obviously see that the latter was a lot more productive in achieving goals that were good for the citizens of that country. And those countries do rank incredibly high when it comes to just civil liberties for their citizens. It's something that cannot be said for the regimes that preceded the revolution in Russia. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, let's look at Cuba, for instance. If we look at Cuba, and I disagree with the government in Cuba quite a lot in many different things. But
right.
But I would say that they far more quickly and far more efficiently implemented a lot of leftist goals that we want to see implemented. And they still have these policies, and they haven't been rolled back by the inevitable fucking rightist takeover that's caused by having a capitalist economy. That's inevitably going to happen. It happened in America, it happened in Sweden, it happens fucking everywhere.
But here's the thing, though. So we also take into account the material conditions and the political context in that nation. So could Cuban citizens vote out Fulgencio Batista? Could they form labor unions that could act as a wedge against Fulgencio Batista? Could they do any of those things, or was it just a complete autocracy?
Well,
because that also makes a difference.
Well, yeah, it does. Well, yes, it does make a difference, and that's why I wouldn't advocate the sort of like Leninist revolution that Castro did. I think that the sort of revolution Castro did was the only way they're going to have a revolution in Cuba. But I wouldn't advocate for that in sort of like first world liberal democracy. That's why I'm advocating mainly for the non-violent wing. However, I still think that there is a role for the sort of like scary violent people and just having the same sort of role that they had during the civil rights movement, which is what they'll cause some trouble and then be there mainly so that to act as a threat.
Even though empirically Richard Nixon and the power structure weaponized those people and led to more law and order crackdown.
Okay, I don't believe that, like, for example,
that's
like
just according to the polling data from the time and what preceded those specific events. When the movement went from being nonviolent to violent, because another thing that happened with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee is that whenever
First
John
of all,
Lewis
I don't think
was no longer the leader of that organization, you had H. Wright Brown, who advocated for literally terrorizing white neighborhoods, okay? And so that also coincided with the electorate saying, okay, we need to crack down. We need to be in favor of law and order policies right now. And they weren't as amenable to civil rights reforms. Okay. So whenever it got more violent, because even Malcolm X, I know he's, lauded as someone who provided the violence and scary counterbalance to someone like MLK. I mean, Malcolm X changed quite a bit, especially after he came back from his pilgrimage to Mecca. He realized, hold on, I mean, white people aren't evil. You know what I mean?
That's irrelevant. I don't.
No. But my entire point, though, is so specifically, with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, ousting John Lewis, who advocated for nonviolence protests, who advocated for civil disobedience. They replaced them with H. Wright Brown, and H. Wright Brown was in favor of literally terrorizing white neighborhoods and killing white people. And that led to law and order crackdown.
Okay, so first of all, I just frankly disagree with your sort of assessment of the movement that it was violent before, it wasn't violent before, and then suddenly became violent. Second of all, I've been clear that I would want the main force to be non-violent. We are talking about a sort of like violent sort of ideological takeover.
So then with the non-violent faction, right?
I usually let you finish.
Sure. All right, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, we've been interrupting each other to where I thought you'd decorum in this, but yeah, continue.
I don't remember I forget what I'm saying. Like, if somebody interrupts my train of thought, there's like a 10% chance I'm going to remember what the fuck I was saying.
Right. Sorry about that.
Go on.
But anyway, though, as I was saying, when it comes to your conception of a revolution, most of it is supposed to be nonviolent, with some violent factions to enforce it, right, as an enforcement mechanism. Where is there room for any sort of electoralism in this, or does that no longer make a revolution?
No, I think that you can participate in the electoral process so long as there is one.
Okay, and so then you're just kind of advocating for what happened during the civil rights movement, right?
Well, I'm advocating for that on a much, much larger scale. But
what do you mean by a much larger scale? Like, what would make it different?
Well, I think that we need to especially now, I think that we're at a critical juncture here with the coronavirus. Basically, I don't think that we should, there have been talks, for example, of restarting the economy. I'm for a general strike. I've been doing some work, for example, with American Johnson on that. I think we need to completely shut down and make sure that the economy cannot function until we get what we need.
Okay, well, yeah, I agree. I'm in favor of a general strike as well.
And I think that's a bit different from the civil rights movement. I think that is the sort of main difference. We're attacking. We're doing the protest, but we're also attacking based on an economic basis. And I think that's something that Martin Luther King, for example, only got to after the civil rights movement. I think that was kind of his main. With the
fault. Poor People's Campaign.
Yeah, I think that was his main fault. I think that if you're doing if you have an intersection analysis, you need to start from that intersectional analysis. Going one at a time might sound intuitively good, but at the end of the day, if you try to solely single out the economic aspect of it instead of tying that to other issues, then it becomes a lot easier to target that movement.
Wait, so you're saying that we shouldn't tie racial unrest and struggle with class struggle?
No, we should. That's exactly
we should.
What we
should. Okay, 100%. No, I mean, I agree with that too. I think that's the best way.
No, I think that my problem with Martin Luther King is that he didn't do that well enough. I think that he needs to be more intersectional from the beginning of the civil rights movements.
I mean, with MLK, it's just from a tactical standpoint, it was what political goals were the most necessary, right? Were the most urgent, and it also depended a lot on
Well,
the political opportunities
I know
at the
what his
time.
political calculations were.
Mhm.
I don't blame him. I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think it was a mistake.
Right, and so I guess like because I do feel like we do agree on a lot of things. I think where the disconnect is because I do agree with something like a general strike. I think we definitely need it. I mean, the economic system, particularly in the United States, is completely rapacious because we don't even have a basic social democracy. We have nothing resembling that. We have disaster capitalism here at this point. But I just so my entire thing is, yeah, we do need to have a general strike. We do need just to have more protest with specific demands. That's all important, right? But my entire thing is you need to have an inside and an outside game. And there are times where you seem to agree with that, but then you say that your ultimate goal is revolution and getting rid of the current governing structures of this country.
That's my end goal. That's not necessarily what I think is I brought up revolution because that is ultimately what I want, and if one happens, I will be quite glad. But I don't necessarily think that that is the only sort of like tactic. But like stirring revolution is the only fucking way we're gonna make any progress. Remember, the reason I brought up revolution is because we brought up the military, and I said that if he does that, then my dreams are going to come true, because I think that that makes revolution inevitable. I mean, you brought up Batista before. I mean, like, that puts us in the Batista situation, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes. No. I mean, if that were to happen, that would put us in this situation. But I do not think that would be optimal. I'd be horrified if that were to happen, because the thing is with this country, I mean, we are atomized. We really don't have strong, robust organizations. People are isolated. People are overworked. People are desperate. And if we were to have an uprising, like even if there was some sort of military coup and Trump was trying to consolidate around the military, right? Basically, some sort of consolidation of power that lead to us resembling Batista, Cuba, that some of the most vulnerable people of society would be the ones to be killed off first. And
undoubtedly.
That's
undoubtedly.
Yeah.
And I am one of those people, and I am willing to take that risk.
Well, I think a lot of people just really aren't willing to take that risk.
And I find that most of the people who say that are like white people, or like straight white men. Most of the people, the actual vulnerable people, are usually more amenable to my position, and the data backs this up. The data shows that.
How does the data back it up?
I'd have to look it up, but the data shows that the idea of not voting and working outside of the system is a view that is held disproportionately by people of color, by sexual minorities, by disabled people, etc., etc.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. Yeah, we should definitely have direct action. And the reason why so many of those groups don't vote in elections is because they feel like the system doesn't work for them, right? And that's an understandable feeling. I get that. But what I'm saying is there's a difference between having an electoral presence, right, and then also having direct action versus, well, I want Trump to, because what you're saying is you would be happy if there was a revolution as a result of Trump unleashing the military on us or the military trying to overthrow Trump. Yes. My entire point is that is completely different and completely antithetical to having direct action and an electoral strategy versus, okay, well, now we're all going to be sheep to the slaughter to the military or to an emboldened Trump. Like, those are two completely different things. Because I think asking people, okay, do you believe you'll get more accomplished through voting versus direct action? And if the data does back up that in those communities, most people say, okay, yeah, direct action is more important, that's completely understandable. That's completely different than, would you rather have the option of direct action and voting, or literally having to be in an actual war against the state?
Well, like, I don't know what. I don't know if the data has been collected very specifically on.
But I'm saying those are two completely different things.
Yeah, I know, and I'm saying I don't know if the data has been done on those like separate delineations. I'd have to look it up, but I would nonetheless be willing to bet that that view of violent revolution is disproportionately held by
that isn't it.
I would
but
be
that
willing
is
to
literally
bet
that is literally an accelerationist view, though.
How's it accelerationist?
Because you're saying that ideally for you, you'd want things to be so bad to when the state is fully unleashed against the people, and then even though we don't have any sort of military organization, that we are suddenly expected that something good will come out of that. That it won't be a disproportionate amount of people being killed.
I don't think that we're going to be fighting. Remember, I started off. I said that I don't think that the military.
That's fair. But what I'm saying is, I think you kind of revealed what some of your goals are there because you said, "Oh, well, that would be a good thing if that did happen." Like,
yeah, if a revolution happened, a nonviolent revolution. Remember, we're sticking to nonviolent tactics mainly, and I don't. So I think that this revolution will. Remember, I think you're still thinking of revolution in terms of like pew pew American Revolution, right? That's not what I'm talking about.
I know. That's not what you're talking about. But the thing is, if we were to have a non-violent revolution, and specifically, like, how does a non-violent revolution work if we're at the point to where the government is literally attacking us and there's no electoral apparatus whatsoever?
We completely destroy the economy of the U.S. Basically, that will force change.
No. What happens then? No. If the military and the government, like, basically, if we have a more authoritarian government that truly consolidates power, is what's going to happen is if we have a non-violent revolution against them, then they are simply just going to kill us.
Oh well, no, hold on. If you're sort of like. If what you're talking about is in the case of the government literally like seizing power in a sort of like dictatorial sense in like more authoritarian power like that, no, I don't hope that happens because that will lead to violent revolution. Revolution would be the only way to go at that point.
Okay.
But I think that if Trump chooses to send in the military, one, I don't think that the military is actually going to do anything, and two, I think that I think the military would probably be on the streets for like a couple of days, and like. I think that they would likely be far less violent than the police, to be honest.
So, but the military,
and eventually, I think that would eventually cause so much chaos that would eventually spark, like the idea, right, of like you see this a lot. People talking about it, like the idea of the military being on the streets of fucking the United States of America to quote protest is such an abhorrent idea to most Americans that I think that there would be a revolution.
But 58% of them support that action right now.
Yeah, right now. Okay, but that is they haven't actually seen it happen. They haven't actually like seen the consequence of what that looks like.
So, thing is, the military has to follow the orders of the commander-in-chief. And this commander-in-chief is not a stable person. I don't trust them.
Well, they don't necessarily have to. They actually have the legal right to ignore his orders if they're.
But my entire thing is like, sure, okay, if a certain amount like ignore his orders, there's going to be a certain amount that like no matter who's president, are just going to follow his orders, right? And they're not going to different.
There'll be some sort of either a civil war or some sort of like standoff. I think that more than likely there would be some sort of standoff, and eventually there would have to be some sort of caving in of some sort.
Right, but my entire thing is certain factions are still going to attack people, right? Are still going to violate the First Amendment and violently kill people who are just protesting, or even looters.
That's already happening.
But it would happen on a larger scale. It wouldn't make things any better. It would be accelerated because then you have the police forces and the military both killing people. And ideally, we don't want that. I'm all about minimizing, right? Like understanding the current context and trying to minimize it. Okay? And that's the exact opposite of accelerationism. But
well, first of all, what I was talking about is not accelerationism. But two, more than likely, I just frankly don't have much based on what every single one of the generals has said, and I've looked at all of the general statements. I frankly do not think that we're at risk of like the military seriously putting down protests. I think the generals are very against this, and they will if Trump actually decides to like be forceful about this, will disobey his orders.
So for a revolutionary,
I mean, Mattis resigned over not over
Mattis
this,
did,
but something something.
No,
He is the generals are willing.
Over, hold on. Well, that's important, okay? Because first of all, you've shown that for a revolutionary, you do tend to have a lot of faith in some of the most violent aspects of the states, which I find contradictory. But the reason why Mattis resigned
no, it's not faith. I have evidence.
He wanted Trump to bomb Syria more. He wanted
more
of a presence in Syria. He wanted more of a presence in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's what Mattis wanted.
That's not true.
To be more hawkish.
That's not true. Mattis resigned.
Then why did he resign?
Mattis resigned because of Trump's actions in northern Syria in abandoning the Kurds. That's specifically in his resignation letter.
Yeah, he wanted more of a presence in Syria.
No, it's not about having a presence in Syria. It's about the fact that he left his allies, the Kurds, who they were sworn to like that was the biggest. He enabled a genocide. Do you recognize that? There was basically a soft genocide in northern Syria after what Trump did. That's what he resigned over. But
it wasn't specifically over Trump removing troops.
Yes, it was. As soon as he removed troops from Rojava, Turkey went in immediately. They immediately took it as a sign to come in and massacre the Rojavans. Immediately. They wasted no time.
As soon as Mattis was elected or appointed as defense secretary, he did want more of a presence in Afghanistan. He wanted more of a presence in Syria. No, but
we're talking about what he resigned over. He could have wanted whatever he wanted. But what he resigned over, and this is in his resignation letter, was over the abandoning of the Kurds.
But that also shows you where his interests lie, because when dealing with an area such as Rojava, right, within Syria, what makes more sense at that point is to focus more on a multilateral solution through the UN rather than having the United States as the sole deterrent.
Right, but that's not what Trump was doing. Trump just pulled out of the region and allowed the genocide.
No, but look, my entire thing, though, is Mattis could have advocated for more multilateralism, could have advocated for more actions through the UN. He also could have advocated, I think this is very important, this is what Ro Khanna advocated for in California Progressive, is putting more economic pressure on Turkey. Because that's the thing, the United States still holds a lot of economic power. And so if the U.S. were to
I think that undoubtedly
Turkey,
he could have done it better, but that's irrelevant.
No, but that's what I'm saying.
The point is that these generals are willing to not go along with Trump. That is my.
But also, I mean, look, even if I were to concede that, okay, sure, like Mattis is someone who not put up with this, that's assuming that neither would anyone who's on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's assuming neither would the current defense secretary. That's assuming that every single faction in the military, most factions in the military, just would completely
every member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that I am aware of is against this. It only takes one person to ignore Trump's orders for there to be just a mass fucking
well, no. What I'm worried about there is I understand that there's opposition to it, right? But essentially not everyone's going to oppose it. And so having the possibility of there being this conflict in the military over something so precarious as using the U.S. military on U.S. soil to stifle people's First Amendment rights, that's just something that in general we should try to avoid. And if we were to have someone like Biden as president, going back to the original topic of this discussion and debate, then that's a line that Biden would not cross, because Biden is going to govern like a slightly to the left Obama. And even though that's not perfect, even though there are a lot of issues with that, we wouldn't be having this type of potential constitutional crisis. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. You have any final words? You want to talk about this? Maybe I'd be willing to have you on maybe in a group with some people who could discuss this, but yeah, I do need to sort of like end the stream. So do you have any final words or anything?
Yeah, sure. So real quickly, all I'm going to say is my main arguments throughout all of this have been that if you just look at Biden's platforms, the fact that reinstituting Obamacare would give more people health care. Going back into the Iran nuclear deal limits the threat of denuclearization. Going back to all, whether it's New START or Open Skies Treaty, also de-escalates with Russia, lessens the chance of nuclear war. The fact that Biden is in favor of decriminalizing marijuana, in favor of ending the death penalty, in favor of ending the federal disparity between powder and crack cocaine, which disproportionately affects Black communities in the United States, that Biden is more amenable to change, and the fact that he also does believe that climate change is real, doesn't think it's a hoax, wants to re-enter the Paris Climate Change Accords, does want us to have emission reduction standards. Trump, in fact, is repealing emission reduction standards. The fact that he does treat climate change as a real issue shows you that on the issues of healthcare, foreign policy, climate change, which are some of the most important issues, and criminal justice, which are some of the most important issues facing us, Biden is superior to Trump. And so since Biden is superior to Trump, it makes more sense to vote for him, to have him in power over Trump. And essentially this idea of, well, how bad could Trump be if he were to be reelected? I think that's already been disproven by what we've seen so far. I mean, 25% of the judiciary now consists of Trump appointees. Even when it comes to the Supreme Court, we have a real quick final point because it's very important. What makes politics in the United States so corrupt is ultimately the influence of money in politics. And the Citizens United ruling back in 2010 ruled that corporations can contribute an unlimited amount of money to super PACs. That gave corporations more power. But it was a 5-4 decision. Every single person who voted against that decision was a Democrat. And then in a similar campaign finance decision in 2014, every single person who voted against it was a Democrat. Everyone in favor was Republican. 2 of them were Obama appointees. Right now in the court, Ruth Bader Ginsburg is 86. Stephen Breyer is 81. They were appointed by Democrats. They're liberal justices, and they voted against Citizens United, right? It doesn't make sense to have Trump replace them with 2 more corrupt, corporatist, conservative justices and then make it 7-2 instead of 5-4 in favor of Trumpian policy. And so that's why, ultimately, to me, it just makes more sense to vote for Biden. And I understand if you don't, but I think if you are in a swing state, and I'm in Texas, Texas is a swing state this time around, it does make sense to vote for Biden strategically just for harm minimization and for advancing our.
Okay, just to sort of reiterate my points again. Remember, the most important thing is it doesn't matter if Trump is better than Biden or not. I think that the path that we've been on, that the left has decided to take since the fall of the New Deal, this idea of harm reduction is a road ultimately to centrist neoliberal disaster. And I think that the only way that we are going to seize power is by using very, very sort of hardball tactics. And that includes things like weaponizing our votes in order to get the things that we want. So yeah, either way, I think either of us are going to be judging you regardless of what you pick, but you heard both of our opinions, and yeah, maybe we'll talk again sometime. I don't know when. I'm always pretty busy, but
yeah, same here.
But yeah, so yeah, I guess this is the end.
All right, yeah, well, I mean, thanks for having me on your stream.
Okay, well, thank you for being on my stream. I appreciate it.
All right, have a good day.
See you. Bye.
See you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.